Teams continuously check wind speed and direction. Jumpers wear helmets and other protective gear.
The technical crew checks the jumpers' equipment and things like that. And we ensure that we ask them where they are landing and things like that. And, we relay to the bottom so everybody's aware, especially the rescue team.
It's an extreme high-risk sport. Only daredevils and thrill seekers need apply. Florence Louis, Al Jazeera, Kuala Lumpur.
They must be mad. If that made you feel queasy, there's more. A man nicknamed the French Spider-Man has scaled a high-rise building in Frankfurt. It took Alain Robert 20 minutes to climb the 153-metre structure in the heart of the German financial capital. Robert is known for his daredevil ropeless solo climbs up skyscrapers, but when he came down from this glass structure, police were waiting for the 57-year-old. He now faces a fine. More news straight ahead here on Al Jazeera. See you in a moment.
In a country beset by poverty and lack of infrastructure.
Sometimes we risk our own lives in taking these roads. We're scared.
Saving lives is a dangerous job.
It's a vaccine, so it's only good for 24 hours. There are patients waiting for these medicines who must be in pain. Lives are at risk.
A week ago, one of the gangs stopped some vehicles on the road, attacking it with weapons.
Risking it all. Guinea on Al Jazeera.
On the streets of Greece, anti-immigrant violence is on the rise.
The road, you have to go from our country and this and that. This is from fascism.
And increasingly, migrant farm workers are victims of vicious beatings. Javeed Aslam is helping the Pakistani community to find a voice. The stories we don't often hear, told by the people who live them. Undocumented and under attack, this is Europe on Al Jazeera.
It is impossible to overstate the mental scarring of the survivors of Chum. Peter lived in the home until the age of 4, when the nuns sold him on to a violent family. By that time, he'd lost his sister. She, like nearly 800 others, had her name recorded in a death register.
For a Catholic organisation to put bodies in here, they were baptized, yet they put them into unconsecrated ground. Savages, that's what they were.
The campaigners think the government is so frightened of the damage to the church that a full excavation would do that it is resisting it. So, they're threatening court action.
I think the only way in which this will be resolved is through an order of the superior courts of this country. I can't see any other way, because there is no will, there's no wish, there's no appetite. Church and state in this country are still wedded in a poisonous pact.
Polls close in Afghanistan's presidential election after a day that seen several attacks. I'm Adrian Finnegan. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. Also coming up, protests in Hong Kong to mark the 5-year anniversary of the Umbrella Movement turn into another chance to send a message to China. Zimbabwe's former leader Robert Mugabe is to be buried shortly after a dispute about where he should be laid to rest. And in a major sporting shock, Minnows Japan upset one of the world's best at rugby's World. Polls have closed in Afghanistan's 4th presidential election. Voters have had to brave violence to cast their ballots. At least 5 explosions were reported at polling centres across the country. In addition, many stations didn't even open. Tony Bertley reports now from Kabul.
A city in lockdown, the streets of Kabul almost deserted on election day. As polling stations opened, the biggest and tightest security operation ever in the capital was underway. The Taliban had warned people not to vote, and it didn't take long before the group carried out its threats. In Kunduz, a mortar round was fired in the grounds of a school where voting was taking place. A number of people were injured. It was one of a series of Taliban attacks around the country, 2 north of Kabul, 1 in Helmand and 1 in Nangarhar province. No casualties were reported, but some people were injured in a blast at a Kandahar polling station. It didn't deter some others from voting.
People shouldn't let fear stop them from voting. It's important to vote and choose our leader.
Despite all the hardships and violence, we haven't lost hope. We have to vote and think about future generations.
This is Afghanistan's fourth presidential election. 9 million people are registered to vote, but estimates suggest less than half that number will actually cast their ballots. Government officials maintain the use of advanced technology and highly trained personnel are making these the freest elections to date.
We're asking the people of Afghanistan to come and vote because this is a historic day, a day to elect the candidate of their own choice.
But there were reports of some polling stations failing to open and voters complaining that they hadn't been registered.
I came here to choose a person who can help the poor of this country, but they say I'm not registered to vote. It's not right.
At the last presidential election 5 years ago, there were queues of people waiting to vote at this polling station in central Kabul. On Saturday, it was a trickle, with less than 200 voting in the first 2 hours.
The security situation is making it difficult, but we were hoping for more people to come later.
But as well as insecurity, people have also become disillusioned with politics in Afghanistan and the broken promises and failure to tackle corruption, poverty, unemployment and security. International agencies say the situation today is worse than 5 years ago, though not everyone agrees.
There is improvements being made. We cannot deny that. But there were also some threats. Taliban increased their attacks. So there were other factors that affected. There were so many other factors that affected.
More and bigger Taliban attacks had been expected, perhaps an indicator the group may be keeping its hardcore element appeased, while at the same time pushing a diplomatic strategy for a resumption of peace talks with the US. They were abruptly cancelled by President Trump this month. The election results will be announced on November the 7th, but it's not just important who wins, but whether the other candidates and all the other groups accept them and agree to work with them. And in the fractured world of Afghan politics, that hasn't always been easy. And in 2014, it only happened because of the strong-arm tactics of the United States. Tony Bertley, Al Jazeera, Kabul.
In Hong Kong, thousands of people have demonstrated to mark the 5th anniversary of the so-called umbrella movement. Police fired water cannon at crowds. Some protesters tried to get through barriers blocking an entrance to the Legislative Council, which had to be evacuated. Others lit fires. Solidarity rallies are also scheduled in other cities, including London and Washington, D.C. Well, prominent Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong has announced that he's running for local office in an attempt to bring the protest movement into the city's political system.
The voting in November is the first institutional method to reflect landslide public discontent since the summer of discontent. I'm of the view that high voting turnout is essential to put pressure on the Hong Kong government and also to President Xi Jinping to show that we are determined to fight for the heart of the 5 demands: universal suffrage, which means free election.
10:05 in the evening in Hong Kong. Let's go live there now. Al Jazeera's Sarah Clark has the latest for us. This has been far from peaceful so far, Sarah.
Well, for now, the streets are back to normal. The traffic has resumed and the cars are back on the road, and the police have managed to disperse the thousands of protesters who were here around where we were, behind us, around the Legislative Council building and the government headquarters. This is where the rally began today, on Saturday, at the Lennon Wall, and then there was tens of thousands of people gathered in front at a place called Tamar Park. Now, this was the assembly where they were marking the 5th anniversary of the umbrella movement. Now, that was largely peaceful. There were thousands of people listening there to speeches, talks, songs, and then a group of protesters moved behind to the Legislative Council building, which is again behind me. They went to the area that was blockaded off, where the police were. They were throwing various devices in bricks and other things. At one stage, a part of the building caught alight, and that obviously aggravated those police, and that's